For 15 years at least, that is before the Battle of Actium down to the year 16 BC, Gaius Cilnius Maecenas was the most powerful man in Rome after Augustus. Perhaps we ought to expect Agrippa in this position, especially after his marriage with the emperor's daughter, Julia. But even then, and indeed up to the time when he lost his master's favor, Maecenas was the man behind the throne. Indeed, he occupied a position that may be said to have been peculiar to the new regime, and that marked the change from liberty, such as it was in the latter days of the Republic, to despotism. For Maecenas held no office. One could call him a vice-emperor or a grand vizier, but the function which he discharged cannot be described by any one word. He was never a consul, a praetor, or even a tribune, nor was he a prefect of the city of Rome. He never even sat in the Senate. At the very height of his honor, he firmly refused to be raised out of the equestrian rank into which he was born, the rank of what we would call knights or cavalrymen, second only to the senatorial one in terms of property. Dear Knight Maecenas, his friend and poet Horace calls him. It was his pride, and a very prudent pride it doubtless was, to be content with this dignity. And yet it is difficult to say what was the limit of his power when it was at its highest. Both foreign affairs and domestic came within it. He had absolutely no position within the state apparatus, but he had the emperor's ear. The emperor actually entrusted him with his private seal, a confidence that can only be inadequately compared to giving a blank check. He could do as he pleased, and he could do it without responsibility. The qualities of a soldier he probably did not possess, or only to a moderate degree. Probably, or rather possibly, he accompanied Augustus to one or more of his campaigns, but he certainly never held an independent command. But as a statesman and as a diplomat, he was extremely skillful. More than once he played with supreme tact the part of a mediator between Augustus and Mark Antony, the two masters of the Roman world. His moderation and his even temper made him an unrivaled mediator in such difficult conjunctures. His work as a statesman we are less able to appreciate, but simply for want of information. Indeed, the merits and the demerits of the unrecognized advisors of the powerful must always remain in great obscurity. But that he was a moderating influence cannot be doubted. What moderation he brought to politics, he abandoned in his taste for luxuries. In this way he was a contrast to the powerful Augustus, who maintained, or at least appeared to maintain, a humble way of life. The private habits of Maecenas were those of the highly artificial age in which he lived. He built for himself a great mansion in the central position in Rome. He had a passion for collecting gems and jewels and wore them in profusion. His love for costly perfumes was notorious. He was said to have been the first in Rome to use a hot swimming bath, while Agrippa built the first public baths. He had a great liking for the ballet and pantomime, amusements which he recommended to his master as means of reconciling Rome to the loss of its liberty. Another indicator of the emperor's favor comes from the ancient historian Suetonius, who says that Augustus found the city unfavorable to his health in the winter, and that he slept at Maecenas' house whenever he was not well. In his last days, Maecenas was tormented with sleeplessness and deserted his favorite city mansion for a villa at Tiber River, where he could be lulled to sleep by the sound of the falls of the Anio. Of Maecenas and his domestic relations there is little to be said that is to his credit. He had a wife of remarkable beauty and passed his married life in perpetual quarrels and reconciliations. He had one wife, but married her 1,000 times, is Seneca's sarcastic account. It was through her, indeed, that he lost his position at court, as she was believed to be a lover of Augustus. A proper scandal for the Roman gossip, of which it was never in short supply. He was an avid reader, an author, and a patron of the arts. His patronage was generous, and it was distributed with taste. It included, but was not limited to, the great poets Virgil and Horace. Early in 8 BC, Maecenas died, saying to the emperor with his almost last breath, "Remember Horace, as you remember me." Augustus gave the promise, but was never called in to fulfill it. 6 months afterwards, the poet followed his patron to the grave. We must be content with knowing that the liberality, the good taste, and the tact of Maecenas made his name proverbial as the model of the patrons of literature. And the patron, we must remember, was a necessity within the artistic world before the public came into existence. And as the emperor's shadow, he was instrumental in the rise and policies of Augustus, while he awarded himself luxuries that Augustus denied himself of. Rome, as Maecenas enjoyed, had not always been as grand and luxurious. If you want to see how Rome changed from a small Latin town into an ancient powerhouse, click on the next video. Be sure to like, subscribe, you know how YouTube works, and I'll bring you more history soon.